I'd love to welcome all of you. It is so exciting for me to see so many of you here with us today. And this mandatory training has been attended by many of us many times, but it's still required by law. So here we are doing our best to learn how to be safe at camp and learn, what we can together. I'd like to play a video if I can. I'm going to give this a try here. It's called The Power of Camp. Just a little inspiration for us to get started. You might have seen it, but it kind of speaks to me almost every time I watch it. I love it. And this shows some high ropes and stuff. And of course, CGC doesn't have high ropes, but we have low ropes. And it's just the feeling that I wanted to share. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for your wonderful help. I'm going to jump into the 3 things that are required of you as a staff person. And one is the training today. So you're all here doing that. And I've got my attendance list here. And when I come to camp, I'm going to bring it. And I need your signature beside your name. So we'll do that there. And those who couldn't make it here today will watch a recording of this. So hopefully we're recording. Yeah, we are. And that's number 1. Number 2 is there's an application on the website on the CCNC-N.org, and it's on the outdoor ministry page. There is a blue link that says staff application that needs to be filled in and downloaded, printed, filled in, and mailed back to the region, and the address is on it. And there is a fee to go to camp. And I hate this every year, and I have to say it, that even staff people have to pay to go to camp because we're charged for every single person that's on campus. And Leslie was brand new to this, and she wrote me and asked me this question, and this is what I wrote back. I sure wish we did not have to ask counselors to pay any fee at all. But we are charged for every single person on site. And if we added our registration onto the camper fees to cover all of our counselors, the camper fees would go way up to well past $500 per camper. So we're trying to keep it kind of even. And that said, the counselor fee is less than the camper fee since we add an arts and crafts fee on top of what's charged us. And so we subtract that, and for Cairo and CYF, we're asking for $370 for our counselors. And for junior counselors, we're asking for $350. And if you are having any trouble coming up with that money, We do have some regional money to apply to our counselors' fees. And you can feel free to ask your church to help support you. And if you cannot come up with that, either of those, or if it's just not adding up right, we still want you. Please come as a counselor and we will figure it out. We will take care of the money. So if you are unable to do that, even if you're unable to do any of the money, we'll figure it out. So just get your application in, and any gift that you can send along with it, we will love to accept. That's number 2. And number 3 is boundary training, which is good. It's online, and it's a couple of courses that I will pick out and let you know by email how to take those courses. And I will also be contacting you if I need to find out your birthday. I know some of your birthdays already, but a combination of your birthday and email address is required for you to go online and take this boundary training. So I will get that information to you probably on Monday, and then you can take it at your leisure, and you can take it in short spurts, or you can do it all at once. I think it takes about an hour and a half. And so I can then, after you log in and take your classes, I can tell that you've completed your class. So there will be no signature or anything following that. It'll just be done in my books. So those are the 3 things: training today, get your application in, and I'll let you know about your boundary training online. So we're going to move along to Tina. Tina Heck is our UCCR representative, also our facilities committee chairperson. She takes care of all the projects that we do out there to try to better our camp. But today she's going to speak to us about the safety protocols and procedures that we need to know about while we're on the site at CGC.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jim. Hey, we were up at camp all last weekend. There were about 13 of us up there for a work weekend, and it's going to look really different. If you haven't been up there, it's going to just look different because the forest has been masticated for fire safety. And that means that they go through with the machine and they chew up all the underbrush and tiny little trees. So now you can see all the way through the forest where there used to be a lot of shrubs. I haven't seen it look like that probably since about 1970. So it's a very different. When you're driving up Chicken Hawk Road now, it's like, oh, there's the cabins, right? They're right there. It's different. Just be prepared that you're going to be like, oh, there's all this. It's spacious. It's beautiful. It looks kind of more like a state park now, because it's been so cleaned up. So we did a lot of trail rebuilding. Sorry, Leanne, I'm giving the facility report. We did a lot of trail building last weekend in the summer camping area, the summer cabins, because they masticated so much. They just buried all the trails. And so we had to just rebuild them. And then we painted Clear House. So, the place is looking great. The pool is sparkling blue right this minute. And if it was any warmer, we would have jumped in last weekend. But it was raining. It was kind of cold and rainy, but we didn't mind. Anyway, the place is looking great. You're going to be real happy with that. In terms of just safety protocols, while you're at camp, there's a few things that we need everybody to know if you're on staff. I know that Leanne's going to go over the boundary training, that will be available to everyone. A couple of things is if you're a clergy person or if you're a director of the camp, you are what we call a mandated reporter for any suspected child abuse. So a lot of times it might be that if you're a cabin counselor, you might notice something. Good thing to do is to speak with your camp director, before you kind of launch into anything with the young person. Talk to your camp director, possibly your camp nurse. How many camp health care providers are there on this? I know Nancy. Who else is a healthcare provider?
Me.
Aleatha is. Okay. Hi, Aleatha. So I think that your healthcare provider is professionally trained also to understand these issues. So It's just an important thing to note, you know, and the directors, Leanne is going to, you know, probably be on call for those kinds of issues. It doesn't happen very often. It's fairly rare, actually, but it's important that you know that that's the case. And I'm looking around, there's a lot of experienced people here. We've got teachers and pastors, and I mean, I feel very confident that, you know, if that kind of an issue were to arise, that you all would take the road of responsibility, right? So there's that piece. In terms of on-site safety and protocols, one of our biggest challenges in California in these days, as you can guess, is wildfire. And CGC, that's why the mastication took place, so that we could reduce the risk of wildfire. The California Department of Forestry actually likes the community of the Great Commission because it's a great place for them to have a base if there is a fire in the area. It's spacious. There's there's lots of parking areas for their trucks. And there's a huge swimming pool, which they could use as a water resource if necessary. It's unlikely that the camp itself would ever actually burn to the ground because CDF likes to position themselves right there. But there are canyons around the camp that do have a tendency to burn. So you just need to be aware that if you're a camp director, you will schedule, or Sandra, the site director, will schedule with you a emergency procedure protocol in case of anything like a fire is the most likely thing to happen. We could say in California, earthquakes, not very likely at CGC that it would be something so extreme that you would need to evacuate. Mostly in fire, if there are fires nearby, mostly what has happened is that it's a shelter in place situation for the camp because CDF is so present with that camp property. So it's not like parents are going to be driving up and picking up their kids, okay, because the roads are small. We're not going to jam up roads with that. But there are emergency procedures. In the first 24 hours that you're on site, there will be a fire alarm drill or an emergency procedure drill. And I think Sandra now is using air horn, those really loud blasting horns. She will speak with the camp director about that. If she doesn't bring it up, you should, because it's really important that you go through that drill in the first 24 hours that you're on site. And typically people gather either in the dining hall parking lot or in the big gravel parking lot. She'll tell you all of that, but that's important so you know that. She will schedule it with you so it doesn't maybe, you don't want it in the middle of your keynote, right? You're going to want it at a time when the campers are kind of available and can leave whatever activity they're doing. So just make sure to schedule that fire drill with her, and then she'll take care of that. If there's an incident at camp, like a medical incident, let's say somebody trips on a trail and breaks their ankle, or something like that, it's important that your healthcare provider have some kind of connection with the camp director. Aleatha, have you been to camp before up there?
No, I have not. I mean, I've dropped my kids off, but
yeah. So I'm hoping that somebody can give Aleatha. What camp are you going to be at, Aleatha?
The one from June 21st to the 26th.
That's Cairo. Dan,
yeah.
Dan, that's your camp?
Yes.
So it'd be really good for you or somebody else who's familiar enough to give Aleatha the tour so she can see the site if she's going to be the healthcare provider and where the refrigerators are. Are you guys in Bobbitt, or you guys are in Bobbitt area, I think. So there's a refrigerator there for medications. All medications are given to the healthcare supervisor, and those medications are doled out to camp participants by the healthcare provider. And that includes adult. So your medications, when you're on site, need to be given to the healthcare provider, okay? What we don't want is medications in the cabins, right? Or they're accessible.
Sure.
So those, I think Nancy and Aleatha probably are the ones who are going to be your go-to folks for medications. And if there is an incident like that, the healthcare provider should be notified right away and allow them to discern, what needs to take place next. If the participant needs to visit a medical facility, there is a clinic in Forest Hill, and then there's a regular major, Auburn Faith Hospital. It's a Sutter Hospital in Auburn, which is about a 40-minute drive to the actual hospital from camp. In a serious incident, of course, they could do air vac, right? They could do an air evacuation. There is, for the healthcare providers and for the camp directors, there is an incident report form that is available in the camp office. And Leanne, are there copies of those in the blank form I think they're in the director's binder, right?
I think they're also in the nurse's office there at Bobbitt. I've
Yeah.
always had a bunch of them if I've needed
Yeah.
them.
It's really good it's important to fill those out. It kind of gives us a paper trail as to what happened. If it's listen, we're not talking about mosquito bites and scratches. We're talking about a sprain, a break, somebody poked their eye, seriously poked their eye, or, whatever that is. So make sure that an incident report is filled out that typically is either the camp director or the healthcare provider. Any questions about that so far? About either evacuation stuff or healthcare provider stuff? Yeah, Larry.
I was just wondering, as a co-director, I will be staying in a room by myself in Clare House while the campers are down in the summer cabin areas. Do I still need to give my meds to the nurse?
Probably not. No, if there aren't going to be young people in Clare House at all, then you're okay. We just want to make sure that the youth don't have, or other adults don't have access to your medication. So if you're in a room by yourself at Clare, you're probably the exception to the rule, right? You're probably the exception. You're probably one of the only people who's going to be just like staying by themselves. Any other questions about, yeah, Leanne?
I'm going to be bringing a few of the director binders up to camp. I've sent them out electronically, but I'll bring the physical ones to camp, and they'll have a few of the incident forms in them for use. And also the Child Protection Services binders. I always bring 2 of those up to camp, one for Bobbitt, one for Claire. And there are phone numbers and people to call and procedures to go through if you have a report to go to CPS. Child Protection.
Our experience in the past is that it's a good idea if you feel like there is a CPS issue to also notify Tony Bynum, our regional minister, just so she's aware that there's a bigger issue going on in a camp program. And we're not expecting, Tony doesn't have to take action. It's just professional courtesy for her to be aware. So that's good. And Leanne also, Leanne would need to know as the director of outdoor ministries. We hope and pray that is a non-issue for us this summer. So, but I want people to be prepared for that.
And also UCCR provides those booklets for the nurses and healthcare.
Yeah, I need to go over that more in detail because there's now COVID-related issues for the healthcare providers.
Okay, and Tina Elsa is also a nurse. She's going to be the junior nurse, and she's been there before.
Who is?
Elsa.
Okay, great. So yeah, there's some COVID procedures for the healthcare providers this year that are new, and maybe only a one-time deal. Maybe it's just this year. We don't know. We'll see what next year brings. But I'll go into that when we start talking about the COVID precautions and all of that. healthcare providers, if you have a camper, it's unlikely, but that if they don't have healthcare insurance, if their family does not have healthcare insurance, yeah, every camper is insured for up to $4,000, I think, for an injury, not for illness, but just for injury. So if a camper needs that, you're going to have to talk to the parent before you take them to a hospital. Those insurance forms are also in the camp office. That'll give you the policy number so that they could make a claim that way. Most people don't, they just use their own healthcare insurance, but it is there and available for any camper that might need that. The other just kind of broad sweeping thing is it's important for you to know, just in terms of health and safety at the site, there's all sorts of levels of safety, isn't there? There's physical safety, there's emotional safety, which, Dan and Steve kind of alluded to, and their passion is creating a safe space. So, there's the physical safety piece that we can, in some ways, is the most obvious, right? That if you notice anything on site, let's say there's a hole or a big pothole in the trail and people are tripping on it, that kind of thing, it's important for you to take note of that. And if it's something where you can just fill it in, great. Or if it's something you need to talk to the facility staff about, that's important too. Some of the other kinds of safety issues at camp are things like sometimes you might see like a dead bat or something, and the kids are freaking out because there's a dead bat. Bats can carry disease. They don't all carry disease, but it's just one of those things. You want to be aware of those kind of things. So, kids aren't throwing the dead bat at each other. Things happen. It happens. And so you just want to just be mindful of those kinds of things. There's wildlife. There's bears up there. There's a bear with at least one cub roaming around camp now. We don't know if it's going to be roaming around, and it's not roaming around like in Bobbitt Hall, but it's, on the outskirts. So you just want to be aware. So make sure that we already have a policy that nobody goes off by themselves. And so that's really important, that people are buddied up when they're walking, even back and forth to the dining hall, especially, let's say, late in the evenings after supper or early in the mornings. That tends to be when the animals are out, not in the middle of the day so much. Other than that, the wildlife up there is mostly, deer and raccoons, stuff like that. There are rattlesnakes up in the Gold Country, but you may or may not see them. It's that kind of a thing. I would alert Sandra and Kyle to that. Let them handle it. I would not say, oh, suddenly the camp director is going to, just go out there and handle a rattlesnake. So give them a heads up. Mostly you just give animals space. You just have to give them some space. Typically they move on. They don't want to encounter you any more than you want to encounter them necessarily. So any questions about wildlife or physical issues? I'm trying to I can't think of anything that is in major disrepair. The activity platform, if you use that, the big one, it's kind of between the pool and the summer camping area. It's been refurbished. It's been cleaned up. We actually repaired a damaged board, so it's good to go. It's a really nice space, super clean right now. I can't think of anything that's in super disrepair. Like I said, the camp looks pretty good. There's a lot of slash around. That means when they go and do forestation projects, there'll be big logs and slash up, just out in the forest, not across paths, not where there's any play area or anything like that. But good to know, if people are tended to want to go climb on logs, probably not a good idea to do in slash areas. So, yeah.
I had a couple questions, kind of bug spray related. I'm kind of a wuss when it comes to bug spray, but if we get the stuff that's safe for pets, like all organic and stuff like that, would it be all right if we put it actually like around kind of the edges of the cabin, like the windows and doors and stuff like that?
That's a good question. I think that you should. Here's what bug spray does. They have done their best to refurbish the floors in the Bobbitt cabins, for example. Part of the reason they get so destroyed is people spray a lot of bug spray inside the cabin, and it adheres to the floor, and then it stains the floor. It's real weird stuff. So if you're going to use bug spray, you need to use it outside, spray yourself or the exterior of something. We want to make sure it doesn't deteriorate the property. But,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. If you're a cabin counselor, kids are wanting to spray, do it outside. Don't spray it in the cabin, right? Go outside to do your bug spray. You can spray everything on your body and your clothes, but do it outside. Don't do it inside any of the buildings. Not only does
Okay,
the
good.
smell linger, right? But you get all the spray is all over the furniture and the floor then. So
When people choke on it.
people choke on it, right? So
Side note here, there's a whole box full of bug spray and sunscreen.
there's
up there.
so much bug spray and sunscreen up there.
If you're comfortable using, what's up there, deep
Right.
woods and stuff.
Right.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I just have-
remember getting eaten alive,
I have just a couple of questions, and I'm sure you'll address some of these when you do the covering of the COVID. But how many kids do we anticipate during this time?
Yeah, I think Leanne's going to be the one to approach that.
Okay.
It's really hard to say. We have no idea. Registrations are due on May 25th, and some churches have told me they have a lot fewer this year. So we have very small camps. So we really don't know until May 25th or a little after.
All right. And then, I know some of these kids, of course, like I said, you may address this in a little bit, but some of these kids may or may not have had vaccinations. And how will we address their?
Right. We're going to talk about that when I.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to that when we talk about the COVID preparedness. That we're going to provide. So, any other questions about facility issues? There will be lifeguards at the pool when you will arrange your pool time ahead of time. Really good idea. All of you should be talking to Sandra, the site director, at least minimum 2 weeks ahead of time, 3 weeks if you can, before your camp begins. Some of you, that's going to be coming up in a couple weeks. You're starting in June. And the things you need to go over with her are your schedule. So she knows you don't have to send her a printed schedule. It's helpful when you arrive at camp, if you have a printed schedule, to make sure they have one in the kitchen, right? So you'll need to review things like meal times, just confirm your meal times. Typically they're 8, noon, and 6, but they can arrange them if you're the only one in camp. Or if you have a shared camp situation, you'll need to talk to the director of the other camp that's there at the same time as you. They'll want to be serving meals at the same time. We're not going to have the kind of numbers where you're going to need a bunch of different meal times. I mean, the numbers, Leanne's absolutely right. I guarantee you're going to have small camps. You may have with 2 camps a total of 35 people. Total with 2 camps. You maybe less than that even. So we're going to just say all the meal times need to be the same, right? So you guys should agree with the other director that's going to be at camp before you talk to Sandra, so she can confirm that. The other thing is she'll need to know your swimming time so they can schedule their lifeguards. Okay. And if there's anything else, you need, you guys have pretty early camps. You're probably fine on campfires, but just be aware that we're facing an extreme drought in California this year. So don't be surprised if for some reason, Department of Forestry says no fires today, or, it's extremely dry, no fires, no campfires. Just be prepared. There's a possibility that you might not be able to have a campfire 1 or 2 nights, or we're hoping that's not the case. But the other thing is, because of that drought, I'm going to ask, and I don't know, I hope Sandra will think of it to speak with you about saving water while you're at camp. It's really important. The CGC runs on a well, and we have tanks, but it does mean we have limited capacity for water. So it's a great opportunity to teach California kids and adults how to do a quick shower, right? You know how to do it. You get wet, you turn the shower off, you soap up, you turn the water on, and you rinse off. So probably not a good year for those 10, 20, 30-minute showers. Okay, we're not doing that. So it's an educational opportunity, right, to educate us about how to live in California in the 21st century in a way that is congruent with what the natural world is asking of us, which is to conserve water, right? It means no big water fights with hoses. We're just not going to waste water. It means making sure, if you hear, this is all those kind of things. If you hear a toilet running in the bathroom, you need to either try to jiggle it yourself, and if it doesn't work, you need to tell Kyle or Sandra so they can come fix it, because that'll drain the tanks. Believe me, it will. You get 4 or 5 toilets running for a couple days, and they can't figure out why there's no water in the tanks. So those are all really important kind of environmental, ecological pieces that are important in terms of just being at CGC during this wildfire drought time. It's a hard time for California, but there it is. So those are good things you'll need to, and the other main thing you'll need to talk to Sandra about that ends up being, it could be a risk factor, is your dietary issues. If you have kids who have, or adults with special dietary needs, it's essential that they know that ahead of time. Okay? People don't show up and say, oh, I'm vegan, I forgot to tell you. Or I'm allergic to gluten, I forgot to say anything. So that's going to come through on your medical forms that you'll have from your campers and your adult participants. It's really important. CGC is pretty much a nut-free facility now. There's absolutely no peanuts or peanut butter on site in the main kitchen, right? So we just had to do away with that because it was such a huge risk at camps.
It's just the counselors now.
What?
It's just the counselors who are the nutty ones now.
Oh, yeah. I would suggest you not bring any peanuts in your snacks. If you're bringing snacks to camp, do not bring peanuts or peanut butter cookies, or you need to read labels and just make sure that they're, you're better off just being, nut-free, truly. That's the safest way to go, So if you're bringing granola bars, you got to read labels. So important. Most kids, if they're really allergic, know to read the labels themselves. But if they're a junior camper and they're not thinking about it and they're in a hurry, that's typically the age group where things happen, because they're not thinking about having to pay attention, especially if they've just been newly diagnosed. So that's another kind of safety precaution. Leanne, anything else? Any of you have been there a long time? Kathy, anything you guys can think of that
I
we
wanted
may
to
have missed?
yeah, snacks, Tina. So maybe this is coming up when we talk more about COVID, but are we allowed to have snacks for the kids?
Here's what we would say in terms of food safety during COVID. You want to have things that are individually wrapped or individually served. You don't want a big bowl of chips. You don't want a big bowl of whatever, Skittles. I don't know what you're giving them, but you want to be able to have things that are like a piece of fruit that's washable, let's say, but you don't want a common bowl. Common bowls, common utensils. You don't even want common utensils. You don't want everybody touching the same spoon. If it was just adults, like last weekend, everybody was vaccinated. We didn't even have to think about it. Every single person that came last weekend was vaccinated, except for Clivey, who's 8, right? But everybody else was vaccinated. So it wasn't an issue. That's not going to be the case at your camps.
Well, and I think as long as we have hand sanitizers at the entrance or area before meals are consumed or objects are consumed, and you're right, individual packaging is super important.
Right. And we'll talk about dining during COVID. It's not going to be hugely different for you, but it'll be a little different because we don't serve buffet at CGC anymore. In the camps, there might be salad bar, but I'll tell you about how we're going to do salad bar. All right. If she does one at all. Anything else about preparedness for camp itself? Safety, you have incident reports, healthcare providers. We're going to talk a little bit about your role, but you guys will have a booklet at camp, and it will have a lot of information in there about logging medicines and all of that.
Excuse me. Hi.
Hi, Denise.
Hi. Maybe somebody else is going to go over mask protocol at this point, or are you going to talk about it?
Yeah, we're going to cover a whole COVID thing. And
Okay.
you guys will
All
probably
right.
have questions about all of that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yes, no problem. Larry.
I'm just aware that is it Dan? Is Dan doing Cairo?
Yeah.
Just where we need to coordinate on what we're asking for the meals while we're up there.
Yeah, you guys should coordinate your menus, right? That's important. I think
Dan stepped off for a deacon's meeting for a moment.
No, he's there.
No, I'm still here. I am stepping out, but yeah, Larry, no problem. Let's do that.
Yeah, you can work with Sandra on your menu choices. You know, she has probably a record of what camps have done over the past, gosh, I don't know, 5 years. You know, so you can do that. You know, talk to her. The menu is available on the CGC website through UCCR. So if you want to look at that, if you're a director, you know.
Is it easier on her? Like, is it easier for the CGC staff to just choose foods, especially this year, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, there's not going to be. We can talk about. You know, you guys don't usually have.
We don't, yeah, and I was just gonna honestly tell her most of the same things that we do every year.
Well, that's the thing. There's kind of a standard camp menu that you guys always typically use. So
yeah,
you know, burrito bar, all that kind of stuff. We need
right.
to talk
One day
about.
with sandwiches, one day with it's
Right. So there's a few
Wow.
things that will be a little different in terms of the common buffet bar that you might do, a burrito bar, sandwich bar, be a little different this year.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about how that could work for you.
Yeah, I just want it to be easiest on Sandra and the staff, considering all the different accommodations that they'll have to make this year. If there was any. But
No, I don't think the menu choice. I don't think the menu choices are going to make a huge difference.
Okay.
We already see, because in CGC we serve cafeteria style already, which makes it so much easier. A lot of camps serve all their meals buffet. We don't do that at CGC. We're already accustomed to lining up and going to the window, and the staff is serving the meal. It's what we call a plated service, and it's super safe COVID wise, and that will continue to happen at CGC. So you guys are already kind of in that custom at CGC. A lot of camps have to switch to that this year, and so you guys are good. Anything else? Safety precautions, anything like that? All right. So Leanne, where do you want to go next? You want to should we go into COVID? Okay.
We have 2 documents about COVID. Are you going to use the UCCR?
I'm going to use the resource guide, yeah.
Okay, I'll follow you.
All right, there's two pieces I want to share with you. Let's see if I can get this one up. Okay. So one of the main things that you all should know is that Governor Newsom on June 15th is going to lay down the red, orange, yellow tiered program. What that means is that there will not be any further restrictions required by the government around our businesses open, how many people can you have in the restaurant, all of that's going to go away, okay? It doesn't mean that COVID is going away. It's a little, it can be confusing for people, right? Because they're like, oh, everything's back to normal. Well, it is in terms of what the government is telling us we can and cannot do, but it's not different in terms of, is COVID still around and how do we still engage with safe practices, right? Now we know that our adults who are coming to camp are all going to be vaccinated. Some of our 12 to 16-year-olds will be vaccinated, but we don't know how many. We're not making them do that in order to come to camp. So we're going to assume that it'll be a mixed bag. Some of your kids will be vaccinated, some will not. So we're still going to err on the side of safety. You know, we are a private institution in so many words. We're not a government institution. So we can set our own standards for safety. And so that's what we've done, both at as UCCR and as the church. So let me go, first of all, let me share my screen here. And we'll go to the intro to the COVID preparedness for UCCR. So basically, we're still going to ask our young people and our adults, even if you're vaccinated, it's probably a good idea to self-monitor their health prior to attending camp.
Tina, can you make that bigger, please? Because it's really tiny on the screen.
Make it bigger. How's that? Is that better?
It's better. Yeah. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So we're still asking people to self-monitor. In the documents that Leanne has, there is a document that where young people can, have their, and you guys should do it too. Really, technically, if you're vaccinated, it probably doesn't make a big deal out of it, but best practice is to take their temperature for 14 days, 2 weeks before they attend camp. And this is just one way that they can monitor, right? That they're not having spikes in their temperature, like having a fever. If you guys are going to do this, then those forms should be completed and given to the healthcare provider when they come to register at camp. If they have symptoms 10 days before camp, anytime in the 10 days before camp, it is suggested or recommended that they not attend. Okay. You guys have medical forms. Everybody fills one out. Youth and adults all fill out medical forms. And those should be received. Do you get those ahead of time, Leanne, or do you get them at camp? You get them ahead of time.
Yeah.
Get them at camp.
Uh-huh.
They'll give them to you at camp. So it's important that the healthcare provider be able to, spend some time looking at those. The fact that your camps are going to be smaller will be better for your healthcare provider because when people check in, they'll need to look at that healthcare form right away, right? Just to peruse it. Make sure they have the medication that's on the form, for example. So we're still going to practice social distancing and what we call enhanced hygiene, which means there will be sanitizing bottles in all the bathrooms, for example, and in the kitchens in Claire and Bobbitt, if you guys are using that space. We need to make sure if you're using the summer camping area that there's one in the cook shed, just because there's a sink there, and they will be in the bathrooms, however. So we're still going to encourage the use of masks indoors and 6-foot distancing, okay? If you're inside with other people. frequent hand washing, sanitizing, not sharing objects. That's probably one of the most, it's like arts and crafts. I'm wrapping my head around how to do arts and crafts in a safe way. I think people just need to use the hand sanitizer. I think that's the best way to do it. You know, I mean, you're not going to issue every child 8 markers, just, or a glue stick or that kind of thing. So you're just going to have to be mindful around these things, but communion cups, anything that's common. Although, CDC has said COVID is not necessarily primarily spread in this way. They can say that now, but it still is, again, we're just going to err on the side of safety. There will be shared bathrooms, and every bathroom should have a sanitizing spray and some extra paper towels so that all participants, when they use a bathroom, can be in the habit of learning how to wipe down the sink handles, for example, or the toilet handle after they're done using the bathroom. It's going to be more challenging for younger people. They probably don't have to do it at home, and that they may come from a family where the family isn't making them do any cleanup. So it's a new skill set, right? I mean, it's a teachable moment. And so that will be available in all the bathrooms, including the dining hall bathrooms. Ventilation should be maximized if possible, especially in cabins, just to get an airflow. Now, all the Bobbitt cabins and the summer cabins too, they all have ceiling fans, which is great. That'll help move air around, and they all have windows. So, we are asking that the buildings not be completely shut down with no airflow. It's important that everybody has some airflow in their buildings. We'll see what the temperature of the day requires. The only real air-conditioned building is the dining hall, which is incredibly spacious, and it's not, it's not the kind of space where you have to be breathing a small amount of air. Does that make sense? Just because of the square footage of it. It's quite large. And the air conditioning, if it's warm outside, will be running in there. Okay, so cleaning supplies will be available. You can always, and please, if you run out, just ask Sandra. She should have unfortunately, cases of this stuff, right, available for the summer. So you'll need to make sure that you have the supplies you need. You'll start out with all of that stuff. You guys aren't doing your own cooking, so that's not an issue for you, except if you're doing, a lot of times, you might have like snack preparation workshop, and maybe you're wanting to make Rice Krispie treats as a workshop in the Bobbitt Hall kitchen for your snack that day. I think that the best thing to do, this is a good thing, Leanne, now that we're talking through this, might be good for all the camp programs to have a box of gloves, latex gloves, or non-latex, whatever, in the camp kitchens if they're going to have kids or adults in there doing stuff with dishes and food. It's easy, it's just easy to put on gloves. Okay, so that's that piece. Any questions so far? We haven't even gotten, we can talk about the mask thing. All the kids should bring at least a couple masks with them for their camp, during their camp. We're suggesting 4 to 5 if they want to wear a new one every day. They will be using those if you're going to be inside. You don't have to wear them inside the dining hall when you're in. Okay? We know that now. Yeah, Janice.
Well, Tina, are you recommending or suggesting, trying as hard as possible to be 6 foot distance from my campers?
Let me explain to you what we're going to do with the campers and how most of these recommendations come from the American Camp Association in accordance with CDC standards. So what they're recommending that summer camps do to limit the possibility of exposure if somebody is there with COVID. And that is where your camp will be divided into what the American Camp Association is calling cohorts. All right. And that means small groups. Camps will be in small groups. Your small groups will stay in the cabins together or eat together. They'll be in their family groups together. So let's say you have a group of 8 kids and 2 adults. I'm just making that up since the camps are small, right? So you have, let's say, maybe it would be great, 4 girls and a female counselor in one cabin, 4 boys and a male counselor in another cabin. The 2 cabins together are making up a family group or a cohort. Those groups will eat together at tables of 8, and they will do their family group activities together. Right?
Okay, but are we staying 6 feet apart from everybody?
I think when
Or
you're
can I
think if you're indoors with a mask in your small group,
Okay, I understand.
It's still, I mean, it's impossible to stay 6 feet at all times. I mean,
Yes, of course. Yeah, that piece I haven't got quite.
Yeah, but
done.
if you're in a small group meeting, if you're in your family group meeting, for example, yeah, kids should be kind of spread
Yeah.
out a little bit.
Well, I'm just also thinking about the affection that develops, between the campers and the camp, me. And probably in a normal year, you're probably not supposed to get too cozy with them anyway. Right. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And, we've been doing this now for 14 months, like you said, but there's a temptation because we've got vaccines going and I'm just thinking about sitting around the campfire. If we have one, do I spread everybody out 6 feet apart?
Yeah,
I guess you gotta.
We want to acknowledge that this is super challenging to do a regular program and still practice,
do the best we can,
safe and social distancing. So it does mean that if your camp is at campfire, yeah, you guys should spread out. Yeah, there's probably not. This is not the year to do back rub workshop or lap sitting. Group hugs, that stuff has got to all be off limits this year. And you can tell folks that hopefully this is just a one-off year, and that we'll be able to return to some whatever normalcy means, at least camp behavior wise. And it will be challenging, Janice, because I know you probably want to hug your kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Tina, it kind of comes to mind, and this is the way we practice at the hospital is, of course, every patient that we admit to the hospital gets a COVID test. Doesn't mean that everybody gets a COVID test, but if someone wanted to mitigate, whether or not they may have COVID or may have gotten COVID at camp, they could get a COVID test before they arrive to camp, and then you kind of have a baseline of negativity before you arrive to this adventure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. We can't, as UCCR, invite people to do that, but the Disciple program can recommend it or suggest it to their
Sure.
the parents of their
it's just a suggestion, some mere suggestion.
Yeah. Leslie, you had a question.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're all starting to get used to, because I'm a hugger, right?
Yeah.
But ever since I learned, boundary training a gazillion years ago, I know not to do full body bear hugs with not only kids, but other grown-ups, right? And I think we all, especially clergy, already know that. Teachers already know that, right? Because it's part of what we've learned. I think 2 things. One is this last, 18 months or whatever it's been, has taught us that we have to discover new ways of greeting one another. And I think for those of us who are comfortable hugging, that's one thing. That's our comfort zone. However, There are people who are not comfortable with hugging. There are people who don't like to be touched. There are people who, who are still kind of leery and a little afraid of not only COVID, but other stuff that we may or may not know. So I think if we can discover new ways of greeting one another, one of the things we played around with at our church, and we've done it when we've had small gatherings outside, is we just have our own little, hello thing, right? So we give ourselves a hug and kind of wiggle our fingers, right? That's our little sign that, we're greeting somebody, and we bow to them or something like that. So I think as family groups or whatever, we can come up with our own signal, our own code for how we greet one another. I just think one of the blessings that has come out of COVID is that for people for whom touch is problematic, this has been a breath of fresh air for them. And I think we need to be able to respect that and learn new ways to communicate that affection. We don't know all of the situations that are in everybody's household. We don't know who's being abused. We don't know, who's been bullied and beating up is a part of that, or, some other kind of touch that is not helpful. So anyway, all I'm saying is I think while I am a hugger and I get it and I miss giving my friends hugs, I think we just need to be a little more aware that that's not going to be a comfortable thing for everybody.
Thank you.
Exactly.
For that,
Thank you, Leslie.
I wanted to kind of share with you guys really quick. I'll be quick, Tina. But one of the things that's popular at the elementary school, I mean, I've been in-person learning since September with my students, and it was really hard to get used to that. But we do foot high fives, which are just like, so that might be something that you can like talking like what you said, Leslie, with different ideas. It's the way the principal greets all the students coming onto campus is she just gives them a little, if they want one, and if they don't, that's cool. But she'll kind of put her foot out, and they know that they can give her a little foot tap if they're, wanting a little extra love. That's a good one for all ages, but totally getting creative with just new ideas on how to greet is a really, really good point, Leslie. Thank you for bringing all of that up.
Yeah, Leslie, I think it's really important. And it is an opportunity for us to, be creative about how we're together without having to be in really close physical proximity to each other. I mean, and 6 feet seems like a long way, but when you're all sitting at a campfire, it's fine. I mean, I would encourage you at CGC, just knowing the facility so well and knowing our programs, there's a tendency to want to meet in Bobbitt Hall for your keynoting. I'm going to suggest that you move it outside. It's a great opportunity for your camps to be outside more. There's the amphitheater. There's the fire circle. There's fire circles at all the areas. There's a circle, big, huge circle gathering out in the summer camping area. I would just encourage you to do as much as your meetings outdoors. You're going to have probably great weather, and it really reduces, the risk of any kind of possible infection. If you're outside sitting 6 feet apart, you don't have to all be wearing masks if you're outside, right? That's the other advantage. If you're sitting inside Bobbitt, crammed together on the floor, you're going to all have to be wearing masks. And so go outside. You're in the Sierra Nevada foothills. It's fabulous. Go out and meet under the trees, meet at this campfire circle. Take some chairs out and put them around the volleyball court. There's even with the small groups, don't put your small groups in a building. You have a small camp. There's lots of space. So just plan on, if you're going up the day before, it's one of the things you guys can walk around and identify at the site, whatever area of the camp you're in, is to say, we'll have we have 3 small groups. One will be there, identify your areas ahead of time. So that's going to be one of the best things about camp is you're outside. 90% of the time you're outdoors, and unless, except for sleeping at night, and nobody has to wear a mask when they're sleeping. But let me tell you, we'll come back to dining, but I want to go down here to the sleep.
Tina,
Yeah.
before we get too far along, and I don't know if it's going to be addressed or not, but I like the idea of creating the COVID bubble.
Oh, somebody has to mute. They've got background noise.
Looks like Mark.
Yeah, there, he muted. Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. I like I said, I like the idea of the consideration for the COVID bubbles, the cohorts with family groups and cabins. But is there somewhere where we're addressing free time and workshops where you'll actually intermingle all those cohorts and bubbles?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's something the program, we can't tell you guys as officially. ACA is not going to say this is how you have to do every workshop. I can tell you one safe zone, swimming pool. You know why? Because chlorine kills COVID. And so the swimming pool is actually a safe recreation area where people from different groups can be together. They still should not be all up next to each other in the swimming pool, breathing on each other. Still want to keep some distance in the pool and around the pool, but it's a safe recreation area. You're going to have to rethink your camp games. It's not a year to be playing capture the flag, probably. Way too many people hunkered down together, right? So I think there are ways you could play basketball, volleyball, and still have some social distance, right? Both those games, you could do that. You guys will have to rethink how you do your recreation in terms of workshops. I think you just spread kids out, right? If you're having crafts on tables on the Bobbitt deck, you spread them out. There's 4 tables. There's 3 kids at each table. You see what I'm saying? So I think you guys will have to think through what activities you're doing, and how you make that work. If you have, like, I know Paige is going to have some bench building workshop. If kids are right next to each other hammering, they probably should be wearing a mask. You just have to, there's a common sense to it, actually, but it may not be, it's not habit for us. It's habit maybe when we're, out in going into shops or grocery stores. But in terms of working side by side, we're not accustomed to that typically. I think the schools are better at it. If the kids have been in-person school, they'll have a better sense of it because they'll have to have had their masks on, when they're in a group workstation, for example. Does that make sense?
Tina?
It does. Yeah.
This is Bob.
Hi, Bob.
What I did with my grandkids at school is I got them lanyards for the mask, so they were ready to use and not being dropped in the dirt and all that stuff. I don't know if we can incorporate that.
That's a great idea.
Well,
it's a good idea, Leanne, and you and I hadn't talked about this. It would be a good idea for the camp to have 20 extra masks on hand. You know how kids are. They're going to lose. They're going to lose them.
I can bring those.
So that would be something that the directors should work with Leanne or the healthcare provider about, having extra masks on hand. So one kid doesn't have one mask for the whole week.
Yeah, their instructions.
It would be really yucky.
Their instructions on the registration packet, of course, says to bring 5 masks. And
Right.
I know what you're saying, though. And also about the lanyards, we have lots of yarn we could tie to the ends of their masks. We also have some leather strips. I found those little tiny lacing leather strips. So there's stuff up there. You can make lanyards.
Great.
We're charging $5 a pop.
For what?
Yeah. Some of our camps are selling. We'll have masks, but they're not going to give them away. They have to sell them because can't afford to just give them. But if you guys bring extra masks, that's the best way to do it.
Okay.
Okay, let's talk. We're going to talk about sleeping arrangements and we're going to talk about dining. So everybody's in their cohorts. You've got these little pods. They're in the same cabin. It's really important. It's a rule we have anyway, but nobody in this setting especially will be allowed into other people's cabins. If you're not in that social pod, you can't go into another cabin, period. You know, even if you're all same gender, like, you know, a lot of times girls go into each other's cabins, and not this year. Okay. That's not okay. So have to be really stressed. There will be, of course, you know, in the Bobbitt cabins, there's bathrooms and sinks. In the summer cabins, they're using common shower house. So, you know, they will have their own sanitizing stuff available inside their cabin. Now, here it says UCCR will clean cabins daily. Now, you have to understand this was written for all of UCCR, not just for CGC. I think that what we have discerned in the past is that the only thing really a UCCR staff person should be doing in anybody's cabin is picking up the garbage if it's left out on the porch. That's the best thing for them to do. I think that it's not wise for UCCR staff to go inside people's cabins if people aren't there, right? I mean, this was something we had talked about over the years. I think it would be better for you all to clean your own bathrooms if they're inside a cabin. I'm not talking about the common shower houses. Those are easier for UCCR to access without being around people's personal possessions. That's the main thing, is around people's personal possessions. Okay, so I think the UCCR staff will be cleaning the shower houses in the Bobbitt area, the shower house in the Bobbitt area, shower house in the summer cabin area daily. In terms of personal bathrooms in the cabins, I think the campers should be responsible for basic cleaning. If you need major cleaning in a bathroom, I don't know why you would, but if you need a UCCR staff person to do it, I think you need to arrange it specifically with Kyle or one of the other summer camp staff who will be in charge of housekeeping. Okay. And arrange it and say, we need you to go clean the bathroom in cabin 32 or the toilet's clogged. Can you please do that? And make sure that there's a staff person, probably the staff person for that cabin or the camp director be present at that time. What we don't want is anybody on the UCCR staff being accused of taking or doing or touching anything that belongs to an individual without someone else there. Okay? Is that all right with you guys? So you just need to be in communication with the staff about that. In terms of, you know, personal belongings, kids should probably, people in the cabin should probably try to really keep their personal belongings separate from other people's personal belongings, including everything in the girls' cabins that end up on that sink counter. You know what I'm talking about. There's that counter in the sink and everybody's toothbrushes are laying there, right? We're going to encourage campers not to do that this year, but to keep their stuff separate. They could have toiletry bags, however they want to organize it themselves. When you have the kids in the cabin and they're setting up for the first time, they need to sleep head to toe, okay? And not head to head. I don't think you're going to have full cabins. I don't think we're going to have that many kids. But I think you should make sure that they're sleeping head to toe, all right? Or toe to toe. That's okay too.
Toe to toe, yeah.
Yeah, toe to toe is preferable, but if they have to do head to toe, I'm not sure why they would have to, unless there's an upper and lower bunk, right? Then they're going to sleep head to toe, right? One head here, one head here. So they're not, you know, bunks are probably not very dangerous because there's a huge piece of plywood between you. And so the cabins are arranged in a pretty safe way in terms of distance from each other. Bathrooms, again, avoid sharing common bathroom supplies, right? So things like toothpaste and towels, it's not so much an issue there. People pretty much use the paper towels. They should bring their own container for supplies. I'm looking here to see if anything. Yeah, you can, as a counselor, you can help them figure out how to do, if one of them wants to take a shower, you know, how to stagger the schedule for showering. the shower house in the Bobbitt area is open, so that will be accessible for people too. Bathroom, okay. This stuff is pretty basic. Like I said, there'll be sanitizing material in each bathroom, so that kids can learn to wipe up after themselves. And really, it has to do with handles mostly, more than anything else. It's the sink handles, about toilet handles. Okay, so let's talk about meal service. So again, you guys at CGC will have plated food at the cafeteria. One thing that some of our camps are doing, if they want to have like a salad bar, and the reason we don't want salad bar is because everybody goes through and touches 10 spoons or 10, little serving utensils. And that's what we're trying to avoid. One thing you can do is have two of your staff people, right? Two counselors or the director or the nurse or whoever can stand on one side of the salad bar, and the kid goes through with their plate, and the staff people can serve what they want, right? So they're like, oh, I want a little lettuce, I want a little cheese. And there's two volunteer staff people, and they're the ones who are touching, I'm touching these 4 utensils, my colleague is touching those 4 utensils, and you're serving them from a salad bar buffet. Does that make sense? That would be one way to do something like a salad bar or a burrito bar. Okay. Sandwich bars are going to be a little bit more complex, and I'm sure Sandra's got a plan for it. But again, I think having your program people, kind of like you as the director or a counselor, maybe have your counselors volunteer for every lunch to serve, help the kids serve. You're not going to have hundreds of people going through your buffet. It's not like this is a super time-consuming process. Frankly, it's not going to probably take any more time than a kid making their own burrito. To give them some meat, give them some beans, give them, stack it up on their plate. Does that make sense? I mean, it's a great way to do it. We have a lot of camps who are doing that this summer with their regular youth summer camps. The only other thing to do is, I mean, if you don't do it that way, you're going to have the UCCR staff doing it inside the kitchen, right? They're going to be making the burrito in there. There's just no way that this year we're going to have people go through and make their own burrito or make their own sandwich, right? Without some assistance. It all has to do with the common utensils. So I would suggest talking with Sandra about, the possibility of using summer camp staff and saying, well, we'll serve our kids a burrito. We'll make a burrito for them. That's fine. That's perfect. And then those staff can have gloves on. You see what I mean? It's just a way of doing it that's fairly simple. And it may be that Sandra will have enough staff that some of her kitchen people can go out and do it for them, and you guys won't have to do it. But I think you should be prepared to assist with these bars, with these burrito bars, salad bars, sandwich bars. Just be prepared to assist with that. Since the kids are sitting in their cohorts at the dining tables, it's okay. We're going to have, the pitchers of lemonade and water, and then there'll be the stack of glasses. I would suggest that you guys coordinate it so that one person serves everybody at the table, right? You can make it a fun thing. Who wants to be the beverage server today? And that one kid is in charge of filling all the cups with what everybody wants to drink. Does that make sense? So that not everybody's grabbing the cups and grabbing the pitchers. It does take more coordination. And so, we'll have to work that. You'll have to work that out when you're sitting down. A lot of this is about the workers themselves. Yeah. Yes.
So we probably shouldn't do KP.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't. You should talk to Sandra about that. What she did last week for us at the work is they rolled up the silverware in napkins, and we picked up one our own serving of silverware that was already wrapped in a napkin when we got our plate. That worked pretty well. Leanne forgot her silverware most of the weekend, but she kept going, "Where's my silverware?" And then she'd have to go back and get a little pack. I'm teasing you, Leanne, but I mean that worked well. So there wasn't a big bin of forks that you're just grabbing from. Everything was pre-wrapped, and that seemed to work very well.
Is it okay if I ask something?
Yes.
Normally with the KP groups, we always have them, do the prayer and everything. So I think maybe we could still keep those KP groups, but just have them for prayer instead.
Right.
Not
right.
setting everything up.
Right. And I think, like clearing tables, absolutely. Kids still clear their own dishes and put them in the trays. And I think, after they do that, they just hit the sanitizer bottle, boom, or go in and wash their hands. It's just not a big deal in terms of clearing your own dishes, but you don't have to set the table in the same way. I think that because, again, your camp numbers are down, I think the kitchen helpers on the UCCR staff, on the CGC staff, they can put the pitchers of drinks out. They can put the cups on the table, right? They're all going to be gloved. So, or their hands are going to be washed. They're all going to be vaccinated. So, they'll be able to put drinks and cups on the table. And then I think each person gets their own silverware from the bin of pre-wrapped, self-serving, individually served silverware. And you have a person at the table who's responsible for doing their drinks. Or you have all the kids, I guess you could have all the kids sanitize their hands and then they can all grab the pitcher. I don't know. You guys will have to figure that out in terms of, but you understand the safety. What we're trying to do is not have people all touching the same thing in one meal period. That's what we're avoiding.
And Tina, I think the things that we learn at camp this year will probably help translate the practice forever, because it's going to be something that we're going to live with for quite a while.
I agree.
And these things will be helpful indefinitely.
It will. It's like cookies, how do you serve, 40 kids cookies? Usually we just put them out and people go grab their cookies, and that's not going to happen. Right. I mean, it might be that one of the kitchen staff comes around with a tray of cookies and serves them individually. Right. That's fine. It's just, you're absolutely right, Aleatha. It's just going to be a different way of how we move through the dining experience. Right. It'll be fine. It's just a different way of doing it. So
I'm guessing no turtle bread.
Again,
bread?
So here's what you can do, because usually what they do is they make every table a loaf, right? Right? That's what they usually do. So if they do that, again, just like your beverage server, you have one person who's in charge of cutting the bread and giving it to each person. It's kind of a neat thing if you think of it in a positive way, that everybody can have, if they want it, a role to play at a mealtime. I want to be the beverage person today, or I want to be the one who serves our cookies, or because you're in your small group, so it'll work in that way. You guys my suggestion, I'm not telling you have to do this, my suggestion is every cohort has its own table, and that's their table for camp. They're used to going in and spreading around and sitting. That's not going to happen, right? They're going to be sitting with their small groups. So my suggestion is, it's like those two tables are cabins 31 and 32. Those two tables are 34 and 30. You see what I'm saying? Or whatever you're going to call the groups. You can name your cohorts if you want, and then they're just at the same table. So you're going to eliminate confusion. And frankly, it makes people feel safe to know. If I was a really young person, I would feel safe knowing that that's my table. There is a psychological safety to knowing what's going to happen. And once they go through this in one day, they'll be, okay, I know that's my table. I'm going to go sit there. Frankly, it's probably more psychologically safe than the free for all we usually do, which for some kids is terrifying every time they have to go to a meal, that they have to find a place to sit. This will be a lot easier. Yeah, avoid touching surface like doorknobs. I joked with my colleague who wrote this and said, right, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. You use your elbow, I guess. But social distancing, basically, we're going to try, well, part of this will depend on how many kids you have at your camp. If you only have 24 kids or, and there's 2 camps and the total is 35 or 40, that dining hall will seat 100 and something people. It's huge. So, probably those tables are pretty big. I would say 4 or 5 people at the table is great. And that'll be fine. Your cohort may need 3 tables. And they can sit girl and boy together. You don't have to keep all the girls separate and all the boys separate. Unless, you're in 5th grade and everybody has cooties, then the boys may actually not want to sit next to the girls, but they can as long as they're in the same social group. We're good about lining up for camp for food at CGC. Everybody's used to doing that. You'll have to help the kids space themselves out a little bit more so they're not, right on top of each other. I would suggest excusing kids to get, I'm not excusing them, but inviting them to go to the line, maybe by cohort groups or by table, which you guys, mostly I see that happening at camp anyway. So again, CGC is kind of prepped for already doing some of this. Dining hall setup, there'll be hand washing stations. Well, with soap and water, that means they're going to use the bathroom, but there's also going to be, the sanitizer, dispensing bottles will be there as well. I would suggest the same salt and pepper on every table. It doesn't get changed it doesn't need to get taken off the table. Approaching Lily's question about KP, that's something. You get salt and pepper on your table and you have that all week. Serving practices, cleaning and disinfecting. This is just kind of a reassurance for you, but that's always the case in a commercial camp, commercial kitchen, that, the surfaces are all going to be sprayed down with probably something like a bleach water. So it'll kill any kind of germs that would be there. There aren't really any porous surfaces at CGC in the kitchen or the dining room. Okay, that was a lot. That's sleeping and dining. Any other questions about that? Any questions about dining or sleeping? Again, it's just common sense. Now, I want to have this thing about arrival at camp. I need to find it. Oh, here. So this was a really important piece, I thought, because a lot of times what happens if you're doing your registration, let's say on the Bobbitt deck, which is a lot of times where camp registration happens, you're going to want to set up your camp registration so that not everybody's showing up at the same moment and clumping up into these non-social distance groupings while they're waiting, right? It may be that you have 2 areas, one at the picnic tables and one on Bobbitt Hall deck, right? Just to direct people into 2 separate areas. Luann, you could do that up at Clare House pretty easily because the deck is enormous. You could have 2 registration areas for decks on the deck there. Same with the summer camping area. You could have one at the picnic table and, you could have 2 picnic tables, at the summer camping area. So that'll be really important to just think. You want to think about how you set all of this up when people are arriving so that you're avoiding, just people clumping, right? So you just want to maybe have 2 stations, especially because your nurses or your healthcare providers are going to have to do this screening of all the kids. And, it may be that you have 2 people on your staff that can screen all the kids, right, in 2 separate areas. You don't have to be a registered nurse to be able to do a camper screen, because this is, basically you're wanting to make sure that you're receiving the information. Maybe you guys will have to figure out how to do it, but we're just trying to avoid crowds. I don't think with our numbers, we're going to have big crowds, right? Oh, here, they're calling it a bottleneck. A bottleneck. You don't want a bottleneck.
Our CCNC-N website protocols say that our camper parents will not get out of their vehicles. They will just bring their child and the nurse meets them at the vehicles. I can't really see that working, but especially now that we're able to be outside, but we might ask parents to stay in the parking lot and not go down to the cabins. And then we check in at 2 different spots and we send the parents with the kid and their medications to these 2 different places to check in. But I'm wondering how we're actually going to do this, because the camp nurse will meet individually with each camper at their vehicle. I don't think that's going to work.
I think that, Leanne, I think if the parents want to get out of the car and escort, this is especially true probably for junior and Cairo kids, and want to escort their kid to the registration table, because frankly, there may be things in the registration process that the parent has to answer, right? Like, here's my child's medication. You're not going to give an 8-year-old lithium, whatever their, drug is, and say, hey, can you give this to your counselor? I mean,
so we'll just go with the same procedures we've used in the past, but people will wear masks because we'll be a little closer together.
Absolutely. People should wear masks when they are at registration. I think it is smart for the parents, unless you have one of these, if you have an 8 or 9-year-old who's never been to camp before and they're freaking out and scared, I think having the parent accompany them to the cabin is okay. But I don't think the parent should be hanging out in the cabin. You know what I mean? You're just going to have your staff spread out to assist families doing this.
Yeah.
Most high school kids are just going to be like grabbing their stuff and going. The parents are going to be like, see you next week. I mean, I don't see a bunch of CYF parents escorting their child to the bar. But for little kids, I think it's important for little kids to have some emotional parental support when they arrive. But I think that, and it might be hard because you're going to have some parents who are going to want to kind of hang out, and you're going to have to find a way to invite them to part and not be hanging out.
We usually have a counselor inside each cabin, welcoming everyone, and they can gently ask, it's time now to move outside, or
Yeah.
Speaking for myself, I'm the one that needed emotional support when I dropped my first camper off as I walked back to the parking lot.
Yeah,
exactly.
Really true. Really true. Okay, I think we can handle that.
Other questions about masks or, Larry.
So as parents are dropping off and taking their campers to their cabin, are we sort of kind of expecting that they will wear masks?
Yes.
Yes, because
we should have them too.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think during the initial meet and greet time when registration is happening and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, hi," and because you're gonna know, people are gonna know each other. People should be wearing masks, even if you're just standing outside on the deck. People should be wearing masks. I don't think the masks are really going to come off in a big way until camp gets started and you're outside.
Outdoors. Yeah, I agree.
Because even on the first night, if it's dark by the time you really get started after dinner, let's say, it's going to be getting darker, and let's say you're inside Bobbitt, people should be wearing their masks.
Yeah.
Are you going to make sure that they're like the N95 or whatever, or is it all right as long as it's pretty legit?
It's
Yeah,
pretty, I think legit.
N95s are not necessary for anybody to have. No,
Yeah, simple masks are sufficient.
a face covering is fine. You know, if you do have, you know, the surgical mask types, they do afford a little bit more protection, but you do
Like-
not have to have an N95.
Larry, nice
Like-
mask.
A
Tina
a
Heck
cloth mask?
masks?
What does
That's
that
got my
say?
art. He's got my art. He bought a mask with my art on it.
Oh,
My aspen,
beautiful.
my aspen trees.
Beautiful.
Um,
I did say that gaiters were not acceptable because they're very thin. So,
Larry's showing off all his masks.
yeah.
Tina's artwork.
Any other questions about? Yeah, Leanne.
He also said that I will send out that chart that UCCR provided for us that everyone is going to fill out for 14 days before camp. And so I will do that. I have it written in my calendar to send it out to everyone who registers
Great.
14 days ahead. And so I just wanted to reiterate that. And that
Hey,
the temperature checks the nurses will do at arrival, and it also says they will do it each day. Are nurses okay with that? Temperature checks each day?
I think you can just go
I
around the.
don't, it
go around
doesn't
the
have to
dining
be the nurse, literally. It could be the counselors that come and do the temp checks. It depends on how many meds we have and how many people we have. I mean, if we don't have a ton of kids with meds, because meal times are the busy times,
Right.
usually for the nurse and med administration.
Right.
So it depends on how much we have, if we can delegate some of that to the counselors, because anybody can do a temp check, especially if it's a no touch.
But we only have 2 no-touch ones available to us. So during junior and Cairo, each camp's only going to have 1. You might have 2 when you get there, Nancy. You can have both of them. And Joy can have both of them when they're there alone. But when those 2 camps are, we have to split them up. Larry?
So that will be done like at breakfast.
Yeah, it says daily check every morning. Actually, it says every morning and every evening.
I have 2 personal ones. I'm going to be there afterwards, though. That won't help you at Cairo. I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
Well, you know,
Unless I can see Aleatha and get it to
if
her.
the camp numbers are small enough, really, I mean, I think one staff person could probably walk through the dining room at breakfast, boom, 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 and just hit all 20 people or whatever.
Or ideally, as they're sanitizing their hands before they walk in, you just.
That's a great idea.
Right.
Leanne, will you make sure that Nancy and Elsa and Aleatha have that PDF of the document from the UCCR that has all the healthcare provider information on it? The resource guide. I sent it to you.
I sent it to them.
They already got it. Okay, good.
Sent it to
Because
them.
those are really important. There's a lot of healthcare provider stuff that we don't need to cover.
Yeah. Yeah, Aleatha said thank you. She said that really helped. So I know she got it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things about what to do if somebody does kind of have a temperature and all that, you know, what to do if you have COVID.
Okay, so that's the beforehand, the 14 days beforehand. Then there's notes here that say if a counselor or camper has symptoms after camp, they are required to let the director know and maybe even CGC, site director, know so that we can decide if we need to contact trace and all that.
Yeah.
So that's in here too.
Let's hope not.
Signed by the parents. I hope they read it before they sign it, but that's in their hands.
My hunch is that we don't know, we're not requiring it, but you may have actually quite a few of Cairo and CYF kids show up who have been vaccinated. I mean, you know, now that 12 and older can get it, and
I think at the nurses incoming station, I think that would be a nice question to ask. And then you'll know which campers.
And it's okay for us to ask.
Absolutely.
I mean,
yes.
We can ask.
It is okay.
A lot of people have said, oh, you know, because of privacy. And it's like, no, not with vaccinations. With vaccinations, listen, kids have to show their vaccination cards every year at school. So
Exactly.
it's okay. It's not like the HIPAA stuff where you can't ask them if they have a other disease or something.
And Tina, I think you covered everything that's on ours also, the UCCR and the.
And it really, if you guys have questions, you can reach out to me or Leanne. I mean, as we get closer. Also, the site directors, Sandra will have a very good sense of what's good behavior around COVID practices and what's not, but I think it's going to be fine.
Okay. I do too.
I'm not going to hang on with you guys today. So I know you have other stuff to get to.
Yes, we need to talk about curriculum a little bit, but Tina, you were very thorough, and I think we have a better idea of what we need to do when we're at camp.
Wonderful.
Inside and outside, we spread out.
Well, I try to get up and visit the camps at least once while you guys are up there. So I'll probably see some of you at camp. If I don't, have a wonderful, meaningful experience.
Okay.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay. Talk to you later.
This is Lee Yates introducing his curriculum, Peaceworks. And first he talks about the documents themselves. And then he talks about how to structure a day of the daily themes. So I'm going to play the first two videos.
There is so much in your Peaceworks curriculum, you may have missed some of it. At the heart of it are daily opportunities for campers to learn, play, pray, serve, and create together. There's also a daily worship section, one for the children's age groups, as well as intergenerational, and then a separate worship section for youth. This pulls together some of the centering and celebrating activities that Inside Out has provided in the past, along with some liturgical resources to go along with it, giving structure to your worship, whether it's in an outdoor sanctuary or inside. You'll also find extras in your curriculum, crafts, games, multi-day activities, challenge course activities, science and nature, and one of my favorites, table talk. Small table tents you can print out with questions, conversation starters to help the conversations in your group time and learning time make it into meal time. You can also find in your curriculum staff training resources, videos, the biblical theological background, and even devotions for your staff. There is a lot to discover. This year we also would lift up the Peace Partner Packet, resources from each of our partner denominations that work together to create Inside Out curriculum, as well as some other nonprofits and those who work in peacemaking throughout the world. They've all lent us some of their resources, and we've put together a packet that can be used in a local church, with families, or at camp. Many of the activities will be referenced in your daily activities. We will move this file to the front of our website right before camp starts, so you can share it with campers, with families, and with your congregational partners. Good luck as you begin the planning for 2019, as you set up for Peaceworks, and as you turn your campers into peacemakers.
Well, as you heard, this was written.
Waiters always look at me and think that I'm going to have.
For some, peace is a heartfelt prayer. For others, it is their life's work. They put effort, they serve, they try to create change because they know peace works. Welcome to Camp 2019's curriculum from Inside Out, Peace Works. Over the week, we hope to turn campers into peacemakers, working on peace in the world, in their community, and even in their own hearts. We open up with Aloha, welcoming folks in with the imagery of the great banquet. We celebrate Ubuntu, the connectivity of all people. We know that all of us are welcome to be part of the body of Christ, needed by the community. None of us can do it alone. We also know that when we get together, conflicts are surely going to come, that we are broken often, and conflict shapes us, but we desire within our hearts shalom. We seek peace. And so we will explore that through the story of Jacob and Esau and their family. But then we'll look to God for an answer, for direction on how we bring wholeness, how we bring peace in broken relationships and in a broken world. And God offers us the example of Jesus. We lift up the example of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples, those who will carry the gospel forward, but also those who will betray, deny, disappoint, those who weren't paying attention when he told the stories the first time, those who were trying hard to get it, but not grasping it. God's agape love claims us all, even when we're not ready to accept it. That example of unconditional love, of service, of humility, of setting aside power to reach out and pull in others in love is the example of agape. Part of sharing love is learning to also love ourselves. It's a balance. We look at hewa, Japanese concept of balance and peace, of smoothness and equality, the idea that we make room for others by stepping back. Hewa invites us to look at balance, loving God, loving self and neighbor, and finding harmony in each. Sometimes, once we've got ourselves together, it's time to step out and make change in the world. Si se puede becomes our rally cry in the camp curriculum. Yes, we can. We look at those who've stepped up to create justice for others, who've empowered others to make their own change, and how communities come together to work for peace. We send campers out in the same aloha spirit in which we welcomed them, crossing bridges, barriers, and divides from camp to the real world, from the communities our campers live in to the world they might impact, working for peace, because peace works.
Okay, this is the packet I've sent out to everyone, especially directors, and it's a huge packet of curriculum with lots of information on every page about things you can do, stories, books, supplemental things you can bring in, little videos. Here's a suggestion for shorter camps. And I took that to heart and wrote to a lot of you and asked you if we could spread this out over 2 years. And so what I've decided with the help of some people that responded was that this year, 21, we would do Aloha on Tuesday arrival, and Wednesday we would continue the Aloha theme, and Thursday would be Ubuntu, Friday would be Si se puede, and then Saturday we'd send out with Aloha again. And then in 2022, we would bring in the other themes of Shalom, Agape, Hayawe, Haiwa, I think he said. And again, Si se puede, because it's the social justice stuff that is just really rich in this curriculum. So much in here. So we are going to use it over 2 years. And there's some more background stuff. Here is the days if you were going to do all 7 days in a row with the topics there that I was just talking about. And then here's images that you can use for each day, which might spark some ideas for arts and crafts. There's the folding of the paper cranes. That would be next year, though. So day 1, Aloha, we would do. Day 2, Ubuntu. And day 6, Si se
puede.
puede.
Leanne, did you say that you sent this to us? I haven't seen this.
I sent it to the directors.
Oh, to the directors. Okay, thank you.
I'm hoping the directors will send it on to you because it's a big file, and but I can try.
Yes, I will do that. CYF staff.
Yeah. So there's an overview of the daily themes. So I'm just going to scroll down it so you can kind of see. Here's Ubuntu, and there's a lot of things for the keynoters in here. Background information for the keynoters for each day. So we're going to do days Um, oh, I forgot. I left my chart back here somewhere.
You were gonna do, you had said that you were doing,
Here we go.
now I'm reading your email.
We're going to do day 1,
Day 1.
Aloha, day 2, Ubuntu, and Si Se Puede.
Yep.
And I just want to scroll down through this to show you how huge it is and how much stuff is in here. The stuff for each day. There's Shalom. We're not going to do that one. We are going to do this one. And Si Se Puede is got a lot of ideas. And then the Aloha Goodbye Day. We could do both years, I'm sure. There's staff devotions. So you could use these for high school kids too, I think. Here's day 1 again with the activities that you can pull up to do with kids and games, activities and games and stories. So that's on here for every day, activities, games, and stories. And then there's some helps about how to find the stories and how to do some of the folding and craft things. Reference guides, and we're not even like halfway down the curriculum. Okay, here's day 2, activities. We're going to skip 3 and 4 and 5 and go to 6, activities and summaries of ideas. And I think that you're really going to have to read it for yourselves to come up with family group ideas, but some of those activities would be appropriate for family groups too, I think. I think I could send it by camper. I think I could send it to all the campers. Because they're slightly different. There's one for older children, and there's one for younger youth, and one for older youth. And those are the ones I was going to zoom in on. They're just slightly different, but the same themes. And I can send those out because I now have the email addresses of all the camps. So let me do that. I will write myself a note and send it out to all of you so that you can zoom in on your grade level, age level. And I'm going to zoom on down to the bottom because this is all the same, more activities for each theme. There's day 7 activities. Okay, then there's worship and devotions. So these could be used for campfire time in the evenings. You really, it's just all here. You don't have to make up anything. Your keynote speaker could use these too for the evening campfire things. I think this goes through the same days, but it's intergenerational kind of slant because I pulled up the one that said all ages, so it's not pulled apart. So he's pulled apart some for older youth and pulled apart some for younger youth. Cabin devotions, if you need something to do with your kids at the end of the day, conversation starters. For while you're laying in your bunks, going to sleep. And then here's the section on arts and crafts down at the bottom. And then there's extra things to do. And these were the table tents he was talking about. You can make them in the shape of a little tent like this and glue on the table topic for table conversation at meal times. So just little questions to spur their memory about what they've been talking about in the morning or to reach a little deeper into how they're feeling. So I think that finishes up the entire packet of talks. And then I wanted to play for you 2 more videos. And one is video for the Ubuntu Day. And it tells what Lee Yates has interviewed different people to describe what the words mean, the peace words of Ubuntu, and Highway and Sisu Puede. And he just does a beautiful job of it, much better than I could ever do. So I'm going to search for those videos again and play you the last two.
Ubuntu. I am because we are. A wonderful sub-Saharan African philosophy, way of seeing the world in my South African context. I'm a South African California, so I offer you my way of exploring, of embodying, of living Ubuntu. I am because we are. A person is a person through other persons. And so I invite you, take ownership of Ubuntu. Take ownership by challenging the young people at the camp to begin by seeing one another. And I say that because when we see one another, do we begin to understand? Do we begin to really live into the real fact that our futures are intertwined? My future is wound up in your future. For me, that is the heart of Ubuntu. A child learns to walk and talk and eat because a child watches an adult do that. The campers will learn how to embody compassion, tenderness, because they'll be watching mentors do that. Older students do that. I grew up in South Africa under a time of apartheid, a time of separateness, a time of difficulty. And I give thanks for my ancestors, my elders, who sang songs of hope, sang songs of joy. How it has shaped me is that it's given me the capacity to truly forgive. That is the invitation for community. That is the challenge from Jesus. That is the gift of Ubuntu. Being a person through other persons.
Paul writes to a community in Corinth that has some serious issues. They had divisions based on wealth, on status, on experience, on ability. They just didn't understand some of the core concepts of community that were embedded in being God's people and so important to Jesus' teachings. A couple thousand years later, we may better understand what a blessed community of God is supposed to be, but it doesn't mean that we are any better living it. In some ways, the Corinthians get some grace because the concepts were new to them. A couple of thousand years later, we still wrestle with division, self-promotion, sharing power, and assuring everyone that they are loved and needed. In genuine community, there is never a conflict between being who we authentically are, sharing the gifts we have been given, and our ability to learn from others. In this way, we are mutually empowered by the same Spirit. Power is not one-sided or unilateral, where some try to impose their will on others. Rather, there is mutual empowerment, where we are affected by others while also making an impact on them. A relational power guided and gifted to us by the Holy Spirit. This structure of gifts and mutual support is designed for the common good. Now, Paul is doing his best to help the church in Corinth understand this concept of the common good and common humanity in the sharing of the Spirit. As we glean a message for today, drawing on Paul's words and the wisdom of the church over the generations since, we are reminded that we do not have to become the same in the Spirit. We're not called to live as a melting pot community, but rather we are a mix of distinct and beautiful ingredients that together complement and expand the potential of all.
Am I still on? Yeah. These videos are available on YouTube under Pieceworks or Inside Out curriculum. Whoops. It's still playing. Okay, maybe I've stopped it now. And so you can look them up yourself, but each day has a beautiful summary like that. And if you recognize Nancy Brink's voice, she does the narration of the biblical theological part. And I watched them all because I just thought they were beautiful. But we're only going to do those. You could watch the Aloha one and the Si Se Puede one on your own to get some inspiration. So that kind of wraps it up from me to introduce you to the curriculum. And like I said, I will send it out to all of you. I'll try to send the appropriate one to each of your groups.